What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel, Big Dog Brett. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and share. Today, we're going to be talking about Week 7 college football, Alabama versus Tennessee, and a whole lot more. So, excuse me. Been a long day today. Had a lot to do. Got a lot done. So that's all right. So, we're going to give everybody a few more minutes to jump in here, guys. So then we'll kind of start getting it going. So, for some reason, people like to show up late to the party. And that's okay, everybody. Stylishly late. I was wearing a hat, so now my hair's all messed up. So, is what it is. So while we're waiting on everybody to start showing up, let's just kind of go over the 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 rankings from last week. If you don't know by now, some people apparently are unhappy with the rankings. Depending on which poll you look at, you've got the coaches poll, you've got the AP poll. The AP poll has Georgia at number one, Ohio State two, Alabama at three. The coaches poll has the same three teams, but none in the same place. Alabama at one, Georgia two, Ohio State three. So then they flip flop both on Michigan and Clemson. Then they flip flop Tennessee, USC, Tennessee. Ole Miss is the same. Penn State's the same. Flip flop Oregon and UCLA. And then after that, it's kind of all over. But generally speaking, top 15 teams pretty close to where they would normally be, no matter which poll you look at. And I think that's about right. I mean, there's some contenders there that may be a little bit different, but it's really difficult to sit down and put a fine tune on all this and have it be perfect. I can almost guarantee you that none of the teams that you see right now will still be in those same spots at the end of the season. But I mean, it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible because a lot of these teams play one another. For instance, coming up this weekend at the noon game, we've got Penn State versus Michigan. That's going to be an interesting game. Both of these teams are kind of similar as far as points allowed and points per game. So we'll see what happens with that. What's going on, Derek Stevens? I see TikTok has dropped in here. What's going on, Hoghead? Appreciate having you guys here. Just waiting on a few more people to show up, and then we'll really kind of start getting into it. Not going to do a long show tonight. Only going to do probably a 30-minute show or less. We're going to rock and roll through it. Just wanted to give you guys some thoughts and updates as to what we're expecting to see this weekend. So, let's go ahead and kind of talk about the number one, number two, and number three ranking here. So, Alabama, Georgia, Ohio State. I mean, realistically, you could look at any of these teams and say, you know what, I can see why they would be one way or the other. One poll has Ohio State with 10 votes, and the other one has Alabama with 11. Georgia with 18, Ohio State with 20, Alabama with 35, Georgia with 32. A lot of Alabama fans were kind of jumping up and down, talking about how Georgia was shouldn't have jumped Alabama. Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. So everybody's saying, well, Georgia had a bad performance against Missouri, so Alabama should be number one. Say, okay, great. Well, then Georgia comes out and dominates Auburn, but Alabama fans don't want to give up that first place ranking because they feel like, oh, well, Alabama had an injured quarterback. Well, Georgia has injured players too. Every team has injured players. Now, granted, the quarterback position is a little more important, I would say, but at the end of the day, Georgia has had two struggle wins. Alabama has had two struggle wins, but one of Georgia's quote unquote struggle wins was a 17-point victory. One of Alabama's struggle wins was only a 1-point victory. So, there's a lot to be said there, guys. So that's why Georgia went back to the number one position. If you're going to give dominance in each week, a thumbs up and say, yeah, that's really good. And then say, well, we're still not going to move you in the first place, even though the first place team really struggled. That's hard to account for. What's going on, Ray Woodfin? Appreciate you being here. Yeah, it's going to be a good weekend. What's up, Gil Lawson and T Money from Flowtown? How you doing? Don't surprise me that we jumped to Alabama. And here's the thing: it really doesn't matter right now, right? Uh, unless things change and Alabama starts losing and Georgia starts losing, these two teams are on a collision course for Atlanta once again. So very, very unlikely for that. For I mean, even if Alabama loses to Tennessee, they will most likely still end up in Atlanta with Georgia. So after that, that's if you lose and you're there, it's do or die time because you're not going to get into the playoffs without a second loss. But more likely than not, they're still going to end up there. So let me do this. I'm going to share my screen here. Share screen in Florence, South Carolina. I've been there many times, sir. Friend of mine lives up there. Let's look at the football schedule here. Let's see. Let me go back to StreamYard and make sure it's showing up properly. Okay, it is. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to do this. And I wish I could move I move it to a different place. Nope, it won't let me move it. Yeah, whatever. Nope. Oh well, we'll just try with this. Uh, do this. There we go. I don't need to be in the picture for this. So coming up at the noon game, we've got Michigan versus Penn State. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit, make that a little better for you guys. So we got the Michigan Penn State game coming on at noon. Yeah, I forgot Temple had a game, had a team too. Yeah. Well, all right. So apparently you guys can talk about this. So on Wednesday, you've got the Raging Cajuns versus Marshall. Marshall with its biggest win probably in school history over Notre Dame. Baylor versus West Virginia, which is a Thursday game. Oh, hold on. More coffee. Yeah, good stuff. That for Thursday night game, you can't really complain because Friday night's not going to be anything exciting. But Navy will probably kill SMU. But West Virginia versus Baylor, that might actually be worth watching on a Thursday night. I mean, I'm not going to be mad about that. Then on Saturday, of course, noon kickoff. If you're a Michigan fan, you don't want this, right? You want at least a 3:30 game, but for some reason, these guys are playing at noon. That's terrible because Michigan's fans are going to show up, but not quite as much as they would have if it would have been a 3:30 game. Penn State versus Michigan. I mean, these two teams. I mean, Michigan is favored by 75% to win this game. I forget what the spread on it. I think it's like a touchdown at home. So that's pretty close. Both of these teams have played extremely well throughout the season. So they destroyed Auburn 41-12, which is very similar to what Georgia did. Uh, Michigan overcame a very what was believed to be a very stout defense in Iowa, 27-14, which they may fire Kirk Ferentz tomorrow. They were, I believe, tied with Indiana or Illinois, whichever one that is. I think it's Indiana at the half, like 10-10 or something like that. But they rolled on in the second half. They made that adjustment, got into the mix. Both of these teams are very similar. They're averaging anywhere from 11 to 14 points per game allowed. They're scoring 35 plus per game. Total yards, is within 10 basically 10 or 12 yards of one another. Passing's almost identical. Rushing's almost identical. Yards allowed. The Penn State has allowed more yards. Um, I mean, it's but only in the passing. So we're going to find out what we're going to see out of these two teams. I think both teams have really good quarterbacks. Both of them are very similar play style, in my opinion. I think Michigan's got a better running back, but I mean, Michigan should win this game, but I think it's going to be closer than what some people think. Penn State might upset. That is true, right? It's very possible. So Derek, are you a Michigan fan? Are you a Michigan fan, Derek? What's your team? Not sure. But looking at this game, I mean, I would pick Michigan to win this game. Then we got Ole Miss versus Auburn. Ole Miss should roll in this game. Texas versus Iowa State, guys. Listen, I'm telling you right now, Texas is probably going to be favored in this game by a substantial margin. They have 16 and a half points. I would not be surprised if this game is a lot closer than what people think. Um, I think there's a little bit of reactionary betting right now. Um, Now, granted, Iowa State does not have a stellar offense, but man, they have a heck of a defense. They have a heck of a defense. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure this game is going to be a 17-point win. It might be a 10-point win for Texas, but I'm just telling you, whoever they play normally is not going to get over. You know, they had one team get over 14 points all season. And that was number 17 Baylor. I think Texas might be held to probably around, I would say, 24, 25 points. I don't think Iowa's going to get there on the offensive side of the ball to beat them, but I don't think Texas is, I don't think it's going to be this big blowout. But we'll see what happens, man. We'll see what happens. I would certainly not expect that to be a high scoring game. What's up, traveling fools? What's going on, buddy? Glad to see you back in here, man. Hope you're doing well. Hope you've recovered after that devastating softball game defeat you guys suffered, man. Traveling fools is good people, man. You guys go check them out. Let's see a little bit of Illinois over Minnesota. Minnesota was actually a really good football team up to a certain point of the year, and then they just really started to have some problems. They looked pretty dominant initially, and then they took that loss to Purdue, and you were just kind of like, what is going on over there? Now, Minnesota has a very stout defense, and Illinois got a pretty good defense too. They just played a game against Iowa where their offense struggled mightily against that Iowa defense. But there was 5 field goals kicked in the whole game, I believe. And the score ended up being 9-6. Sound like something out of the 1800s, man. It was just before the invention of the pass, crazy, crazy game. I think this will probably be the best offense that Illinois has seen all season. I actually like Minnesota to win this game. I would take Minnesota to win this game if I was a betting man, which I'm not. The boss lady is messaging me here. Am I in trouble yet? No, I'm not in trouble. Okay, we're good. Just checking. Texas is happy to beat Oklahoma. I got Iowa State in an upset. Ooh, get them there. I'm gonna take Minnesota for the upset. I think Illinois might be favored in that game. Then we come down to Georgia Vanderbilt. Georgia by 50. As long as we don't sleepwalk again. Vanderbilt started out pretty fired up. I think they had a pretty bad game last game. What was their? Are they getting back to the Vandy we know? Yep, Vandy we know 28. Oh no, they got 28 points. I gotta hand them that. They scored 28. Alabama wailed on them 55-3. Expect a similar performance from Georgia. Georgia's defense not as good as it was last year. Georgia's offense is about the same. I'm actually going to make a video comparing Georgia to itself from last year at this time. Come to find out, even though we scored 42 points, apparently Stetson Bennett had some type of or has some type of shoulder injury. This may be a good game to have Georgia play Carson Beck, maybe as the starter, so Bennett can get his shoulder well. Georgia's got some games coming up down the pipe. We want to make sure he's well if he's going to be a starter. Vanderbilt's quarterback's throwing for a little over 50% right now. Stetson Bennett's throwing, I think, for 60 or 65%, somewhere in there. So Georgia found some rushing some rushing momentum with Branson Robinson and Dejon Edwards. So hopefully we can get those guys back in the game. Should see what's going on. If we do start Stetson Bennett, I really want to see him out of there by the end of the half. I really don't want to see him play any more than necessary. I would prefer for him not. If they're just going to hand the ball off a lot, I would prefer for them to just let Stetson take a rest and let Carson Beck get in there and just sling it around if he needs to. All right. Of course, you guys, you know how I'll do. I'm going to make you wait for the Tennessee-Alabama game. We'll come back to that. I do want to talk about, excuse me, what's that? Alabama, Tennessee. Of course, we're going to talk about that later. Iowa, Texas. We're going to talk about that. Trying to get my notes screen pulled up here so I feel like this. Oklahoma State has looked really good this year. They kind of, I don't want to say snuck their way into the top 10, but they haven't got quite as much praise as maybe they should have. And I think that's because their defense has been a little bit hit or miss. TCU almost doesn't have a defense. So this is going to be a shootout game. This game is at TCU. TCU is only favored by 4. So this is basically a coin flip. I think Oklahoma has a little bit better defense, but it's so incredibly similar. I mean, these teams are very, very similar. They here, matter of fact, the points per game, OSU allows 46.4. TCU allows 46.4. Points allowed per game, 24.8 and 23.8, a 1 point difference. Yards passing, 310 to 299. Yards rushing, 158, 230. So TCU's got to stop Oklahoma's pass attack, and Oklahoma's got to stop them from running the ball. I don't know if they can. It's going to be an interesting game. I would not bet this game unless I absolutely had to. What's going on, Brian Dibb? What's up, BSA? What's up, 225 girl? Welcome back. If you like offense and a lot of points, that's definitely the game to watch. It's going to be an exciting game. Both of those teams have a pretty good offenses, but almost no defense whatsoever. Right now, Oklahoma is wishing they could be them. They're that bad. Oklahoma's that bad. So, looking next onto the Syracuse NC State game. Syracuse, another team right now that's looking really, really good. Probably better than what they Syracuse. I mean, this is another one of those 50-50 games. I think Syracuse's offense is a little bit inflated numbers wise because they haven't played anybody. Um, I think that NC State's definitely played a harder schedule. Stand by. Stand by. That was the boss. Where do I get stats? I actually get my stats on the ESPN app. Right now, I'll actually show you. I'll go ahead and show you what I do. So while I'm talking about a game, I will have multiple. I'll have 10 or 15 different windows pulled up. So this is what I'll do. I'll actually have this window pulled up. So as we're talking about it, I can actually look at who they've played over the last 5 games. I can look at the scores. I can look at points per game, points allowed, yards passing, yards allowed. I can look at the quarterback, their stats, their numbers, interceptions to touchdowns. Look at their running backs. Look at their top receivers. And this typically gives you, if you keep up with college football, you can get a pretty good feel for how teams pan out. Like you see, you see UConn right here, 41-10 and 48-14. So similar, right? But I believe Texas Tech is better than any other team they've played. I believe Clemson's better than any other team they played. I believe FSU is better than any other team they've played. So I'm going to say that the North Carolina Wolfpack probably has the better team overall here. And I would, and it also tells me, what the point spread is, the over under percentage of winning this game. I mean, I can pull up everything about one of these teams that I want to talk about all on one screen. So it makes it a lot easier than the way I used to do it. I used to take notes and I put them on a notepad on the WordPad, and I had a WordPad up in the corner of the screen over here, and I was looking back and stuff back and forth. But um, now I can pull those up and just rock with it. Yeah, it's a lot easier, man. What's going on, Worm? Big Worm. I mean, Big Perm. What's happening? What's happening? Yeah, that I do a lot of those pick 'em apps too. We're in a lead we're in a pool at work. So it just makes things a lot easier if I can pull that up. Then I can go back and I can go share screen and tab college football schedule and do that. And then here we are, right back here. So yeah, I would take NC State here. Arkansas BYU might actually be pretty good. I would take Arkansas in that game. Let's be honest. With Georgia playing, Alabama playing, and I'm probably not gonna have a whole bunch of time to watch a lot of these other games. Probably just not gonna have a lot of time. 7 o'clock though, you can count on me checking out the LSU Florida game. That's gonna be a good one. We'll see what happens there. Florida still trying to figure out what to do with their quarterback. LSU trying to figure out how to fake a Southern accent. We'll figure that out later on in the season, I guess. Number 4 Clemson versus Florida State. Now, this may be another game that's worth watching. DJ Uangalalele, ukulele, ugalali, ugalali, golly, what a day. Um, guys, he's doing pretty good, but so is FSU's Jay Travis. Jay Travis had a pretty good year. Nobody really expected Florida State to come out. These teams have both looked really good in some games, and they've had some really tight games. North Carolina State lost 30-20. Wake Forest beat FSU 31-21, and they also lost to North Carolina State 19-17. So, a couple of games here are close. Clemson beat Wake Forest 51-45 in double overtime. Good night, can't talk. Uh, this could be an interesting game if Florida State's defense shows up. They could win this game. I know a lot of people not going to want to hear that, but before you get all crazy on me, let me tell you, Clemson's only favored by 3.5 points. I mean, essentially a field goal. So when you're talking about an unranked Florida State team that could potentially knock off the number 4 ranked team in the country, guys, you got to look at the stats and go, hey, it could happen. So if I had to pick an upset for the week, this is the one I would pick up. Florida State could absolutely come out here and shock uh, Clemson. They just could. Florida State's actually averaging more yards, even with 2 losses. They're averaging more yards in total passing per game than Clemson. Clemson is allowing an average of 255 yards in passing. So it's going to be interesting. Now, Clemson's defense on the run game is much better. So they're going to try and stymie Florida State's run game and see if Florida State can beat them through the air, and Florida State might be able to do it. So we'll see what happens. I mean, I'm just telling you, I would put that team on potential upset alert. That could scare you. Kentucky versus Mississippi State. Where's that at? What do with that? There it is. Uh, Mississippi State's actually favored. They're favored by 4 points at Kentucky. I think Kentucky will be loud. I don't know how Mississippi State's going to handle that. Um, Mississippi State's only got one loss against LSU, I think, in week 3. I mean, it was early on, but this is the same team that beat Texas A&M, and they beat the almighty you know what out of Arkansas. Kentucky just lost. Kentucky just lost to South Carolina, and the week before they lost to Ole Miss. Um, this is not the Kentucky run the ball we had last couple of seasons where they could really run the ball. What's that guy's name? Um, oh, somebody help me out. What was that running back's name at Kentucky? Bilbo, not Bilbo. Bobo. I can't remember his name. No, Snoop. No, what was his name? Something. I remember some O's was in it. Um, but yeah, it's at home, but I mean, it ain't gonna matter. Uh, Kentucky just can't run the ball. I mean, they're only averaging 92 yards a game, and they're 263 through the air. Now, granted, Mississippi State is not getting much more in rushing. They're getting a little over 100 yards a game, but they're getting 350 yards in passing. I mean, it's a lot more. And they got a little momentum here coming off of a big win, a ranked win, and then they beat the tar out of Arkansas. I think Mississippi State's going to come here and just roll all over Kentucky, but we'll see what happens. Then you got Notre Dame versus the Tree. Nobody cares. Yes. Oh, that's pretty cool. Nice. All right, so let's get into what we're really here for. Let's get into what we're really here for, which is the Alabama Tennessee game. In most years, Alabama would be a 90+% favorite. This year, they're less than 70%, 69.8. My daughter is spraying smell good stuff down here. She's one of those Bath and Body Works junkies. Oh, jeez. Yeah, South Carolina. Don't you spray nothing else in here. Go on. Now. I got a fan. Fogging me out. I have a headache. Smell good. Smell so much smell good it smells bad. You know what I mean? All right, so I'm gonna share this screen just so I can show you guys what I'm looking at here because I want to talk about this. All right, so here we are. We're looking at Bryce Young versus Hendon Hooker. Hendon Hooker, statistically, is just as good or better than Bryce Young statistically. With 8 more passes, he has 6 more completions. So the percentage is negligible and different. However, with 8 more passes, he has an additional 230 yards. He has 4 less touchdowns, but he also has 3 less interceptions. He has not thrown a single interception all season. Jahmyr Gibbs is an absolute monster at Alabama. If you're not stopping this guy, he is going to run all over you. He's good. He's really good. Tennessee has been running the ball with Mr. Right, not Mr. Wrong. Uh, 315 yards, really good. Mr. Holden, I think Alabama's still struggling to find some quality wide receivers out there. Tennessee's not. Tennessee's got some good quality wide receivers. Mr. Hyatt leading the team, 27 receptions, 388 yards for 5 TDs. That's 160 yards more than T. Holden. Look at their past wins. Tennessee is undefeated. They have 3 ranked wins. Alabama has 1 ranked win. You could say Texas A&M might should be in the top 25, whatever. Defense looked really, really good. Defenses looked pretty good. Offenses looked good. Offenses looked really good. 63, 63, 55, 59, 38, 49, or 40, 38 there, 34 there. So Tennessee is averaging more yards, averaging more points per game. They're allowing almost the same. They're getting more total yards per game, and more passing per game. They are 50 yards shy on the rushing. Way too much here for my liking of passing yards allowed, but the rush has been really, really, really good. So the question is can Tennessee continue this downfield onslaught? I think they can. I don't know if Tennessee wins this game, but matchup predictor is putting Alabama at 70%, Tennessee at 30. This could be interesting. This is at Tennessee. That place is going to be loud. It's going to be the loudest place that they have played all year, except for maybe at Texas, since you can look how that fared. Texas just doesn't seem, Alabama doesn't seem to do as good on the road. That's what we've heard. That's what we've been told. Seems to bear out. Um, they at Texas, not as great. At Arkansas, somebody else just played Arkansas and beat them better than this. They didn't get 26 points. Texas A&M, that was an ugly win. Granted, they had an injured quarterback, but here's what we've got. Tennessee's only a 7-point favorite. So what they're really telling you is this game could go either way. They expect 65 points. So basically what they're telling you, subtract 7 off of 65 gives you 58, cut it in half. It's about 29 and 7. So they're expecting the game to be somewhere around 30 to 37, 30 to 35. Like a 38-33 game is what they're expecting. I think that's possible. It just depends on how Tennessee handles if they can stop Jahmyr Gibbs and if they can pass downfield. Tennessee can win this game. They can. Cavassier Smoke. It wasn't no, the guy from a few years back. They had a really good rushing game. Derek, you just wrote a book, my man. If Tennessee was to beat Alabama, this would be the year to do it. You got home field advantage, and you got an Alabama team that's not playing well right now, and that's a recipe for an upset. I agree. I think it really depends on Bryce Young. I think the main reason he didn't play last week pretty much at all is because Nick Saban felt like he could beat Alabama the way he did, and he did. Jalen Mildew, as he's been coined, I guess. Jalen Milrow struggled in that game mightily. And if you put them out there on the field against Tennessee, Tennessee will absolutely destroy Alabama. No doubt about it. Hendon Hooker is really good. If Alabama's secondary shows up, and they can stop them, then it could be a blowout. Who knows? But I'm just telling you right now, if I had to pick another upset of the week, this would be it. This would absolutely be it. And then the Georgia game, obviously Georgia's going to roll in that game, but I'm really curious just to see what they're going to do with Bryce Young. If they roll Bryce Young out there and he's still injured, which by the way, they say it's a shoulder sprain. If it's a shoulder sprain, um, and that typically that's an injury that's typical of a week to 2 weeks. He's going to be just getting kind of healed back up. Nick Saban said today in practice that he took limited throws. We're on Wednesday. Wednesday. If he is not at least, I would say 85% or better, I don't know that Alabama wins this game. If he comes out there and he's 90%, they win the game, most likely. If he's 85%, or if he gets injured in the middle of this game, Tennessee's going to win this game. Now, you're going to get people up here saying, oh, you lose Alabama, you love Alabama. Listen, I have no love lost for Alabama. I'll admit it to you right now, just like a lot of Alabama fans will tell you they got no love lost in beating Georgia or Tennessee or anybody else. Now, why are we talking about Alabama? Because they're the number one slash number three team in the country, depending on where you look, and so is Georgia. So it is what it is, guys. Derek Stevens said, hopefully they can prove me wrong, but I just don't have any faith in Tennessee. Sorry, not sorry. So where's it at? When does Georgia play Tennessee? Oh, I'll play it another time. I got a video that I made of making fun of old Rocky Top. We'll play that another time though. But this is kind of a classic South rivalry. It's very good to see that Tennessee's getting that program at least more respectable than it was. Now they may lose this game. They've had a few seasons here in the past few years where they went 0 and 6 or 6-0, and then the rest of the season was just terrible. But the fact of the matter is that if Tennessee continues to look as good as they do now, they can't affect Hooker. They're going to be in trouble. They're going to be in trouble, and nobody's really stopped. Nobody's held Tennessee to less than 34 points, and nobody has scored more than 33. I think I think this could be an interesting game. We'll see what happens. What's going on, Pastor Dave? You got here just in time for me to jump off, man. AC sprain in the shoulder joint. Yeah, he's. I just don't know if they're willing to injure him in this game and lose him for the rest of the season because if that goes from a mild strain to a moderate, the heal time goes from 1 to 2 weeks to 6 to 8 weeks. So it's a big, big difference. Up in the air if Bryce plays. I don't know if it's up in the air if Bryce plays. I think it depends on how well he plays. Like if he's 85%, Tennessee could easily win this game. If he's 90% or better, if he's 90%, I say it's a close game. If he's 100%, y'all can run away with it. But I'm really basing it on that. Now I can tell you, Nick Saban is not going to tell you anything on whether or not Bryce Young is good to go. He's going to say he's day to day, just like every other coach does. But this is there; it could be big. Well, that's it for me, guys. I'm going to go ahead and jump off. You guys have a great day. We'll catch you next time. God bless. Go Dogs.